Gentlemen, thank you for appearing on BeerNet Radio, the podcast where all your dreams come true. This is the podcast for beer distributors. And if you are a brewery owner or you work for a brewery, it's okay. You can still listen, but just keep it to yourselves. You guys, we have special guests today. You know them, you love them. Since the pandemic, these guys got me through the pandemic. Friday Beers, the media company that has evolved from just a string of memes on TikTok and Instagram to now a full-flown media empire, including a new beer, which we'll get to. I, for one, have been following Friday Beers since the very beginning. I've really enjoyed the content, and I have to say that Almost Friday TV is probably the best, highest quality produced and written and shot videos on YouTube at the moment right now. And if you don't watch Almost Friday TV, you need to go on YouTube right now. It's hilarious, but it's not only hilarious, but some of their bits are dramatic and they're biting, and I'm telling you guys, they cut to the core. So we're very fortunate here to have co-founders Jack Barrett and Will McDonough. Jack is a co-founder of Friday Beers, and Will McDonough is also the CEO of Corestone Capital, which I think is wrapped into this somehow. So why don't you tell us, we might have some older listeners who, unlike me, don't just hang out with 25-year-olds and maybe aren't into the zeitgeist of the young man. Tell me what Friday Beers, how it got started, and what it's all about.
I would love to, and it's great to be on this, Harry. I first want to triple endorse what you said about Almost Friday TV. The sense of humor there on that channel. Tyler Falbo directing and leading, Billy Langdon, Chet Collins, Will Angus, Liam Cullen, Elise Patton. The actors and the sense of humor that they cultivate is, I think, the best thing we put out there. And that's sort of a good sign of, or I'll call it a good indicator of how we've grown this brand from what was just Friday Beers. And I'll talk about that super quick to kind of dial in what you were saying, Harry, about being a fan of it. Like, we started Friday Beers, my brothers, Max, Sam, and I, Max, Sam, and Jack Barrett, based on this feeling that those two words represents. Like, you're thinking about getting through the week, and those two words are like, wow, if I get to Friday, I made it again. I get to hang out with my buddies. I get to go through the weekend. I get to commence Suck Down. I get to have great experiences with my friends. I get to go through things that I've been looking forward to for a long time. I also deal with the stuff that I don't want to deal with through the week. I get nervous on Sunday because I'm hungover. I don't want to go to work on Monday. I get anxious on Tuesday. I don't know how to do my taxes. All of these growing up things that we explore in our comedy, that is why we came together and we said we should build basically a comedy account that's dedicated to really finding out more about those feelings you go through as a 20-something-year-old in life. And I think the reason that it worked so well, we started it at the end of 2019. I was living in New York City. My brother Max was living in Los Angeles. My brother Sam was living in Dallas, Texas. We were all kind of throughout the country, and we were just making these edited videos that had a lot of the jokes in there. It applies to everybody. Like, every single person who is getting through life, is figuring out how to spend more time with the people they love, is enjoying the times they get to spend with those people. That is the Friday Beers feeling. And it really cuts through to a 25-year-old as much as it does to a 45-year-old, as much as it does to a 65-year-old. My dad, who he and his friends did these same things growing up. And obviously, certain things about the humor change and they're adjusted for the current times, but that little nugget is what made us take that, as you said, collection of videos and memes and build it out to what we are now, which is this incredible media company. And more specifically on this call, a company that's really a lifestyle brand, and that's putting out a beer that represents the good nature and the comedy and the humor. And we'll get into this more, I'm sure, but it's the best tasting light beer I've ever had in my life. So that's sort of what
well,
today.
I got to say that I really appreciated Fringe Guy. And if you don't know who the Fringe Guy is in your friend group, then it's you.
Yeah.
And I had to realize that the hard way. But and I before we get to the beer, I also want to say that they've also come up with these characters that are fake but kind of a little too real. Like Brian Bishop, he's a podcaster that just doesn't give a fuck about. And my favorite though is Royce DuPont, business influencer who also gives no fucks. And these, if you do nothing else, just seek out those two clips from those two guys. It's gold. It's just gold. That's what it is.
I think you're like hitting on what sort of made us extremely relatable to people is like we made up characters who are based on people in your life. Everyone's friend group has characters like Fringe Guy, and we wrote this whole initially a Bible of like 20 characters. Here's who's the big fella in your group. Here's who's the glue guy in your group. Here's who Fringe Guy is in your group. And people really gravitated to those characters. And this is when we didn't really have any comics. We didn't have any real talent part of our company. And as we grew, we built, I shouldn't say we built, the comics that came in built incredible characters. Chet Collins built Royce DuPont. Billy Langdon built Brian Bishop. And those type of characters are extensions of this Friday Beers way of thinking about life. And they're all like hustle culture characters that are in this like kind of weird niche that's really popular on Instagram right now, but all over social media, I should say. But that's just a mark of like what this community is and what this culture is. And I couldn't be happier with how these people have come on and just taken Friday Beers and almost Friday to another level with that type of character building. And we're honestly just getting started. It's so cool to see what those guys are doing.
You know, I saw in the notes that you've got 20, an audience of 20 million, mostly young men, which is right up the wheelhouse for beer. And I also early on noticed that you had like Sam Adams, you had, people that you were promoting through the platforms. Now I think I've seen Natty Light on there and Voodoo Ranger. So what compelled you guys to make that leap from promoting other people's beers to creating your own beer?
I'll start this off and then I'll pass it to Will a little bit. But like the general thought was we were doing a lot of deals with the preeminent beer companies in the United States. And they saw our brand as sort of like a sign of how I think good beer advertising used to be done, which is really celebrating the feelings around coming together with your friends and drinking beers. And we were doing, 7 figures total deals with these different types of companies. And we were sort of just like kind of looking at each other and thinking like, maybe, it's worth it to explore putting our brand out into the world, not at the level immediately where it would come close to what these brands were paying us to do advertising. But if we worked hard on it and we did it the right way, maybe it could become a brand that succeeded in this marketplace that is going through a lot of change right now. And I don't think there was like a preeminent brand that was really dominating beer sales conversations that we were like adamant about not getting into. We just said like, if we put out a good product that has our message behind it, we could do something that eventually becomes a staple in the beer drinking space. And so the story is a little longer about how I came together with Will, who I've actually known for a long time before this. And I'll kick it over to him a little bit about how the actual company came together. But that was the nugget. We were like, if we do this, it could change who we are as a brand. And it could also like introduce a great tasting beer that has our way of life tied to it. And so that's sort of how we decided, like, let's give this a shot. And I'll pass it to Will about how we kind of came together and how we built this thing up.
My background, Harry, is complementary to this, I think. I worked in professional sports for 10 years. I represented the New England Patriots and a bunch of players on their team, from Tom Brady to Mike Vrabel to a lot of notable names, negotiating their private business dealings where corporations would come to us and say, I want to associate with what you stand for. And then we got wise to how to monetize that and got wise to how to, start to get equity instead of passive income, sponsorship deals. I then moved to Wall Street, where I really worked on up and down Wall Street. I had several funds. I worked at Goldman Sachs and did a lot of consumer investing of my own. And what I saw there, I was a seed investor in Zico coconut water. We sold to Coca-Cola. I was a seed investor in Avion tequila. We sold to Diageo. And what I saw with those brands' ability to become institutional scale was they built a community, they built a brand awareness, and they built an identity that people, sought. And so Jack and I, as he said, been friends for a long time. My old, you know, partner Matt Burdoff, who just had a baby today, God bless him.
Did he have
Um,
it today? I got to take Bird off.
yeah. So Jack and I were at Matt Burdoff's wedding in Philadelphia several years ago, and I said to him, I was following the Friday Beer's growth, and I said to him, man, if you guys ever wanted to launch a beer, please call me about it because it's just the demographic of 20 million plus 18 to 34-year-old males is what every alcohol brand dreams of being relevant with. The authenticity of what the Almost Friday media and the Friday Beers brand had, which was had all of your listeners, big corporations were after them to pay them to borrow that authenticity, to endorse their product as what was the product for that demographic. And the combination of all of those things was a dream setup, And so what Jack said to me immediately was, well, I wouldn't want to do it unless it was the best beer in the market. I'm not just going to slap my name on something and have it be a gimmick. And I said to Jack, the proverbial, hold my beer. I went and got Jay Harmon, who's the founder and CEO of Cisco Brewers up in Nantucket, which sold to Anheuser-Busch and, a big part of the craft beer collective. I went and got Fred Matt from FX Matt and Saranac Brewery up in Utica, New York. And I brought them to the table and I said to Jack, trust me when I tell you, this is the group that can put together an institutional scale, meaning we're not making it in the garage and hoping to be able to make 2 tanks when we only made 1 before. We can actually roll out hundreds of thousands of cans and cases off this line that we have reach into. And that the quality is going to be something that, not only you want to drink several of, but as Jack said with the media company so brilliantly, when you taste it, it brings you back to a moment in time. I'm 44 years old now, but was just with some buddies over the weekend that I kind of grew up with and came up with in New York. And that taste of putting your hand into that cooler and pulling out a light beer and opening it and that first sip, it just brings your brain back to a moment of happiness when you remember being with your buddies around the dorm room or at the tailgate. And then that moment of it's Friday at 5 o'clock, when you're in your 20s and I'm finally like, oh, bring me back to those days. So Jack had nailed that with the media company and how could we make a consumer product that actually tasted like that? And so I'll let Jack tell you the story about how we came to the taste and the flavor profile, because I think it's really important, and he and his brothers and the leadership team at Friday Media drove that. But it also led to why we were able to bring a beer to the market so fast. It happened to be during a time where some other friendly beer companies were in retreat and had stuff going on, and that was just lucky for us because we were prepared ahead of that. But we've sold just recently our 250,000th can in the last 6 months, which is a great threshold. We're launching new markets every couple of weeks. We're launching a direct-to-consumer bit, which will be very interesting because of the footprint and reach of Friday Beers and their social handles and the ability to get beer on doorsteps that in markets where we don't have distribution yet. We have a lot of exciting things happening, but this is not a gimmick. This is a real business that even if it wasn't associated with the Friday Beers brand would be successful, I think, because of the quality of the beer. But the unique capacity for me as an investor and a partner in the business is to align with something that has immediate brand awareness, undefeated brand affinity. And that gets people to try a product once. But once they've tried it once, if it ain't good, they ain't going to buy it again. When you try this beer, you want it again. You not only want 6 or 8 of them in that sitting, but you're going to buy that 12-pack the next time you're at the register. And so I think we've struck that holy grail, and that's why I'm excited and stare at the ceiling at night about what this brand's going to be.
Let me just say that you're currently distributed in the Northeast, it sounds like, and which makes sense because FX Matt is in Utica, New York, and by the way, I've known Fred Matt for many years, and I knew his uncle FX, who we have a yearly conference, and he would come. He sit on the front row and write poetry, I thought he was taking notes about what people were saying, but no, he was writing poetry. Just a great guy. Miss him, and Fred's great too. And I mean, those guys, I think they're like the second oldest. I mean, everybody knows Yingling's the oldest, but I think they're second or third in the country that's continuously running.
They
Those
were
guys,
the first legal license post-prohibition, and so that's quite the claim to fame. And Fred, I think he's in his 90s now, but he looks great. We always make fun of him now. Fred's in his 50s, maybe 60 at the latest, but we love busting balls with Fred because he's wearing his khakis and his button downs, and keeping the beer brand authentic to what true beer drinkers want, which is, again, the Holy Grail.
right? And I live in San Antonio, and just by pure chance, I got in tight with the Black Rifle Coffee guys, and they were another brand that had a huge following before they had a coffee, and I'm also friends with the Happy Dad guys, and that's another brand that started as Nelk Boys and just a podcast and social media that they have turned into a successful seltzer. And so it can be done, because I will say that the path is lined with dead bodies of people who have tried this. And like you said, Will, a lot of it is just slapping a name on it, and the creators aren't really that involved, and it can get sideways fast. And so how I think one thing that I noticed is smart is that you're not nationwide immediately, because that could be rough. And so how are you going about doing the slow rollout of this, and what sparked that?
Well, you said Jack's a New York guy, from the tri-state, and I'm a Boston guy. And so with Fred making the beer in Utica, New York, just for ease of shipping and reach and relationships, we launched in Boston. We've recently launched in New York, the lower 7 counties in New York, and we're now connecting those two places. We're in New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, upstate New York, so we're kind of like geographically connecting dots, mostly for coverage. And, we could have, because of the reach of this brand, been nationwide immediately. And, it's an honor for us to be having the inbound requests that we're having from the distributors. But we're also this is not our first rodeo. And we know that we have to really service the market. We have to get the sell-through strong, and we don't want to dilute ourselves. I think there are skeletons of previous brands that kind of went wide fast and then ran out of steam. And I'm proud every day to see our inbox with all the people saying, we want it, we want it, we want it. And that's why we're launching the DTC, because I feel like we want to satiate that, and we want people to be able to have a Friday night cookout with 2 12-packs and be able to share that moment with us before we want to just have pallets on trucks to all 4 corners of the country. And so I think we're going to be able to kind of thread that needle for a bit as we continue to creep down the East Coast. I should also mention we're in the Outer Banks and have a lot of demand from the Southeast that we're legging into slowly but surely.
And
Right.
the thing I'll add to what you just said, Will, and your question, Harry, is what we have learned and what we knew is that it's pretty easy to like cheat case numbers if you open up more states. Because if you go to a state that's really enthusiastic to have you, they'll probably order like 15 cases, 10 cases. You'll be boosting numbers. But to really sell through meaningfully, you have to spend time in the state. You have to get more points of sale. You have to spend time with the salespeople from beer distributors. You have to make sure your brand is understood and that you're giving attention to every person buying your beer. That is the meaningful relationship building that we are obsessed with cultivating. We don't want to go wide and be like, look at all these sales numbers, X company that we've done, because those are hollow. And like, if you sold 15 cases into Delaware and then no one rebuys because you didn't spend time there because you're already in New York, that's not worth opening up in Delaware. We have to spend time in every state. And that's what we are really focused on doing, is getting deeper into the Northeast, where I'm from, where Will's from, where there's a huge hub of Friday beers and almost Friday traffic. The biggest sort of centralized cities are there. And that was like the mission, is like, can we go deeper into these places and really fortify the Northeast? And then we can start to kind of pick and choose where you go to next.
And you nailed something right there, Jack, was ride with the salespeople.
Yeah.
So many people don't do that, and it's the
Yeah.
most important thing. Just you don't have to spend 2 months there. You just need to ride with a few salespeople to get to know the accounts and get to and it can also teach them how to sell it, and because your unique proposition. I feel like did Fred help you guys with distribution initially with who
Yeah,
to.
he did. And I will say to your question, like I've done like 50 sales days with people. I present at every distributor we go to in depth about what is Friday Beers, the brand, and what is our beer. I've probably done 20 of those presentations. After that, I'll spend a week going on sales trips to on-premise and off-premise locations with the sales guys who are doing those routes. And we kind of put them on our Instagram too. We tag them on socials so those brands can get recognition and kind of plug in what we're doing. Fred and Jay have been really helpful with figuring out which distributor you should go to in a state. I will say that what we found is, and Will, you can kind of add on here, like the distributors who are more committed to what the brand is, we get Friday Beers, we know what it is, we're going to make it a priority to sell Friday Beers, are different than some of the mega distributors who are just like have great relationships with like the huge beer companies, and they don't really going to care about if Friday Beers moves. They like winning the business, but they don't care about growing the business. So we're trying to find the distributors who are like, we'll put Friday Beers as our light beer. This will be what we push out. And those are the best relationships we've seen because, as Will said, once people who know Friday Beers, younger kids especially, they'll buy it. But once people try who aren't aware of the brand, they'll rebuy it. And we can get into the tasting a little bit, but like that's the formula. And that's why we try to find distributors who are a little bit hungrier on the Friday Beers port or idea of Friday Beers versus the huge guys who just don't have enough time to service the brand like that.
Yeah, and Harry, you know the demographic of some of the distributors. There is legacy planning going on, and sometimes we'll meet with a group, and their pitch to us is, "Here's the volumes we did last quarter. It's not personalized. It's not here's who you are. Here's why we're a fit." Because they're just used to that, and they're used to people begging them to take them on. We're in a unique position, which I don't think a lot of beer brands are in, where we're actually looking at markets and looking across two, sometimes three options. Because of the issues that Bud Light has seen, I think specifically the ABI network folks. I want to say this real quick. People often talk about what happened with that, and oh, I feel so bad for Budweiser. We feel bad for the distributors. We feel bad for the guys that lost their volumes and aren't going to make their annual numbers and aren't going to get their Christmas bonuses by no fault of their own, just because their portfolio had that harm. And so we have seen some help there, some interest there, and we've seen a lot of excitement from folks that are looking to replace that light beer volume without, talking out of school. That's a known factor. And then also the legacy stuff. The guys that we've really had a lot of success with as well is, hey, my dad started this business and I'm inheriting it, and this is the next. I want to take this thing to the next level, and this is a brand that I understand and a demographic that I want to deliver. That's making new decisions about what beer they're going to reach for on Friday, and has a couple dollars in their pocket, but still wants that light beer taste and doesn't want to sit and drink 10 IPAs on a Friday night. They want to just watch a ball game and kick back and buy a bucket. And so we're learning every day too, and we're getting better at it. We've had some better success in markets than others, but that's also, helping us make decisions as we roll out to subsequent markets for who do we want to align with. And it's been great thus far. I think we've been really lucky, but also, surrounded ourselves with people that have made mistakes before and helped us not make them again.
A good point is that you really haven't sold the beer until it's made into urine. That's because, you can sell beer to an account, but it has to end up in a toilet somewhere before it to be rebought. So you can write that down if you like. That's a freebie. But I feel like if you look at like Happy Dad, they kind of over plaster. It's kind of everywhere. And I've noticed that you guys aren't really pushing it in your social media. Is that because you're not nationwide yet, or is it just more subtle?
We have a couple of different accounts actually, because we have a drinkfriday.beers account that is not massive. I think it has like 60,000 followers or 65,000 followers. That's pretty heavy. But like on Friday beers and almost Friday, we don't plaster it everywhere because it's not exactly for everybody. I mean, people are
Mhm.
aware if you go on our page and you look at our flow code and you see some of the ads that we put throughout the week on our IG, but we're only in like 5 states. So we
Right.
don't really want to be like over, I'll call it over advertising it to people.
Yeah.
We're still getting a lot of good inbound traffic, but I think we're very cognizant about like trying to make it a FOMO thing versus just like listening to what people are saying about where it's going to be or where they want it and then slowly rolling out. There's a big
Right.
balance between how much should you be talking about this and how much attention do you want people paying about it or paying to it that we're always trying to toe. And
Right. Because you don't want to market against empty shelves.
no, and it's like
And
we
then,
do
and I suspect that's why you're doing the DTC component, just so if you really want it, you can have it shipped to you in some states,
correct.
even though you're paying for shipping, and also you can probably gauge demand better of which states to go into next. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah, and we want it to be tasteful too. If you go to Bud Light's Instagram page, you realize that their engagement is de minimis. Not to pick on them, you could look at any of the beer brands because it's really hard to build a community. Back to one of my previous points,
Yeah.
these brands have a hard time building a community and building engagement. So what a dream is it to have an existing engagement and an existing community for us to expose to this beer brand that it actually is real and it actually does exist. But if we converted that Friday Beers page to a whole bunch of advertisements, I guarantee you it wouldn't grow, and I guarantee you the engagement would go down. So we're always going to stay authentic and true to what the original brand is and make sure that the audience knows that it's a real thing, knows that they can get it, but also keeps coming back for the content that you said off the top, you and many others, from all walks of life enjoy.
And so, how do you envision distribution expansion going? Like, do you have a plan, like to be in a certain amount of states by this time?
Yeah, well, I will give a quick bone to we hired a guy named Phil Clark, who many people in the industry know. He was the president of Shein for years and ran importation for Killian and many well-known brands. So we brought Phil in-house to help us do this tastefully and roll it out. Leveraging the relationships of Jay Harmon and Cisco and the relationships of the ABI network there, and then also leveraging Fred Matt and Saranac and Utica Club and the reach that those guys all have. So on a state by state basis, we triangulate who we have direct relationships with, who we have experience with, what products are in their suite that we may be up against or complementary to. And it hasn't been, we've had some debates, but it hasn't really been controversial anytime. It's ended up being quite clear thus far with who we should go with. And of course, we want synergy with the networks, for future growth. But we're able to look at it on a state by state basis, and then we're able to leverage, our existing headcount, like I said, geographically to service some of those counts in the ancillary markets. I don't want to have Nebraska and New York State and then have a sales guy flying back and forth. If I can have Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York, that guy can be in the market every day, and we can really be ingrained and be real.
Good stuff. And I guess we should talk about the beer. I always forget about the beer. I mean, it's a lager. What are the stats on this? What are we working with here on ABV?
It's 120 calories, 9 grams of carbs. It's meant to be a light beer that's like Miller Lite. It's like Coors Light. That's like a quantity, sessionable light beer for drinking with your friends in any sort of occasion. And the thing that makes it different is I had never actually had Saranac Brewery before. Maybe I'd had it like in passing or something, but I never tasted an FX Matt brewed beer. Is it has the personality of a really good tasting like full bodied beer. It tastes
Hmm.
like an incredibly crisp beer. When we did the taste test, they sent us Fred's team sent us, I don't know, well, like 5 or 6 beers or something
Yeah.
from their stable of beers. And then we also went and got 5 or 6 beers on our own that were like the heavy hitters, like the Coors Lights, Modelo was in there, um, like the big hitters. And we did this taste test totally blindly. It was me, my brother, and my partner at the company, Andrew Kenward. And we all ranked, and I've done a couple of these taste tests before, we all ranked this beer within our top two beers.
Mm.
And it was a beer called Utica Club, which I've never had before. But
Yeah.
it's like a 4.5% ABV light beer that Fred Matt makes.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this beer is incredible. How have I never had this beer before? And they just don't really distribute it widely, but it's like
Yeah.
a beloved light beer in the Northeast in that area. And I
Right.
think it goes along as like you learn in the beer business, like you just have to have marketing power, marketing spend if you want to put a beer out and try to challenge it for like big sales across the country.
Right.
So we tried this beer and we're like, can we take this Utica Club and make it a little less ABV, a little more sweet, which is a thing I think our generation likes,
Mm-hmm.
and customize it to become Friday Beer's Tasty Light beer. And they did that. They went back, we modified it. It became a little bit more kind of like how we wanted it for this 4.2% ABV beer. And it tastes much different than what I think you're expecting it to taste like, which is a whatever light beer that just tastes like water. This
Right.
beer tastes like a beer. And that's what I get excited about when we do these presentations and then when we go out on sales trips and I'm like, just try the beer. Tell me what you think. And people are always falling in love with it when they try it. So it's
Right.
like the brand is amazing. But what the key is, in my opinion, is FX Matt making a light beer that is really different than what you're expected to try. And that's sort of the 1 and 2 that we're rolling with right now.
Yeah, Harry,
Right.
like I said, this is a bit mature. It's a more mature version of I was a Boston College guy drinking Busch Lights, and we always talk about the beers we drank in college. But when I would go now to taste a Busch Light, I'm kind of shocked at how watery it is and tasteless it is. And there's a reason why we were buying the cheapest thing we could at the time. But when you drink this beer, it's a bit, I don't want to say heavier, but the reason why we refer to it as a light lager is because it does have the taste of beer. It just feels like your college beer matured. It
Right.
feels like the right beer for you to drink in your 20s and 30s on a hard day after a hard day of work, or sitting on the beach, where you're not drinking some heavy thing that you can't have several of. I'm going to sit down on Sunday and I'm going to watch 8 hours of football. I can drink this throughout the day and enjoy my day and not be crippled by it. And so we
Right.
call it a tasty light lager because just a tad more mature than the beer we drank in college.
I get, it's better to be lucky than smart, obviously. That's how I've built my career. But you're lucky in that the Bud Light situation that nobody could have predicted. That's a black swan event that happened last year. And then also, light lagers and pilsners are coming back into vogue with young people because I think people are just tired of the double hopped IPA, double imperial. Just it's like eating a sour loaf of bread. I've been saying this for years, and I'm finally the consumers caught up with me that there's nothing wrong with a good hearty light lager. God bless America,
Yeah.
right, Biscuit?
A lot of people are seeing what you're seeing, Harry, and they're trying to create exactly what you just said, a good cold light lager. And that is what we, I think, have stood for at our core is like not the actual idea or the actual product itself, but like the feeling that drinking those gives you. And like if it's quality, then you're going to sell more of them. And that's what we're trying to hit right now.
If I'm a distributor, I'm Harry, a distributor here in Texas, and I'm old, and I don't really know. So I guess my question is, how do you get over if you meet a distributor that maybe you want to be with and they've never heard of Friday beers?
Yeah.
Is that a problem?
No.
Or does,
Hasn't happened to me yet.
yeah, I
I'll,
guess
I'll,
not. I mean,
I'll explain this in the way that we talk through it because there is a world where people aren't familiar with the media brand. It happens all the time. And we've distilled like the three, what they're called USPs, right? Well, like unique selling propositions of Friday beers for a distributor. And they're really simple. We have like 1-page sheets about this. The first thing is what you said. There's a huge social media or a media audience. There's really closer to 30 million now, but those people follow us across every social media channel, across podcasts, across YouTube, across newsletter, across this immense attention span that people in this country pay towards where media is seen right now. It's huge. That's one. Two is, as Will said earlier on the call, it's the best beer drinking audience you could ever imagine. It's 21 through 45-year-olds is like 80% of our audience. And it's mostly male, which is just what it is, probably like 75-25 male, female. That's a beer drinking audience. And the key part about two is that they don't have an established affinity for a drink that we're trying to battle against. They just want to have a good time with their friends, and they're looking for a beer that they can do that with, and it tastes good and they can have a lot of. That's two.
All right.
The third thing is that we market way more effectively than any other brand. We control these social media platforms that have millions of followers. We tap you in your store or your bar or your restaurant directly onto our social media channels, stories, feed posts, retagging, getting people to see what your brand is over and over again. And that's not something that a lot of distributors, any really distributors have, frankly, besides maybe Happy Dad, but who does an amazing job of marketing, as you know.
Yeah.
But like, we have access to that because we built the channels, and we are the same company because we're a digital media company. It's like we're the same company that creates and owns the platform we publish content to, which is a beer drinking facing company. So those three things are how we let people know this is a brand that you can easily get behind. It doesn't always sell through right away. Sorry about that. But those are the things that we try to establish big time.
So think about this, Harry, when you know the business very well. And when you ride along with a sales guy and you go in, we had a promo over the past couple of weeks with Market Basket in New Hampshire. So we send our team into the store. They have a great end cap. It's beautifully merchandised. They have the pricing clear. But we also send in people who are capturing content in the store, geotagging themselves to the specific location where they are, publishing the price, linking through to a Google map for how to get there, and talking about it, right? And so it's harder on a granular level when you start to talk about, bodegas in New York City, and we do that as well. But picture you're the manager of a store trying to move volume, and all of a sudden you're showcased to 25 million views and eyeballs with a link to your store. If Market Basket in New Hampshire called up Jack Barrett and said, I want to do a promo for the week and drive traffic to my stores, they couldn't get him on the phone, right? They're too small for that to have an impact or for that to be a deal that they could allocate resources to. But the way we've constructed this to be truly global yet local is that you can, from your store, take a picture of yourself holding a 12-pack in front of the register and link to your company's Instagram account that might have 3,000 followers and say, we now sell Friday beers. Here's the link to the promo, whatever it might be. We publish that on the page. Now all of a sudden I'm sitting at home going through my stories and I see my local guy. I see the girl at the register at my local store. That's amazing. I click on the thing and all of a sudden I'm on their page. I'm following their store. I'm engaging with their promotions. Or I'm going in and I'm saying to the manager at the local store, I saw you on Friday Beers today. How cool is that? And so that's what we continue to do, is really engage the market in that way. What a great sales tool for the sales guys in the market to be able to say, hey, thanks for bringing in the product. Let's do an end cap. Go stand next to it. Hold up a 12-pack. We're going to tag you on the page. And all of a sudden, they're a celebrity for 15 minutes. Right? Their kids are seeing it out at college. You can actually
drive people to, the accounts themselves can drive people to the account, because if you tag, Friday Beers it's brilliant.
And so let me take it one step further. So now we get a phone call from somebody like a Market Basket, and they said, geez, I'm really trying hard to get football Sunday watchers into my store to buy chips and dips and 12-packs. Maybe we could do a little package here where every Thursday throughout the football season, we run a promo. We'll discount the beer. We'll put it prominent. It'll be next to the Tostitos and the salsa. It'll be next to the hot dogs and the charcoal briquettes. and we're going to run a promo in all of our circulars, and you're going to take that visual and you're going to put that on your social channels, and you're going to drive traffic from your audience into my store. That's what Happy Dad did really well out the gates, but was just unsustainable for them to keep up with. That's what we can do on a really granular level, because the brand isn't an individual. The brand is a visual and a feeling.
Right.
And the other thing I'll add to that, Harry, is like that's all great audience facing stuff that helps the retailers. But we also communicate very regularly with our distributors. Every single week, we send out a funny email at like 5 o'clock Eastern time on Friday. And it's sent to every single distributor we work with, the individual distributors too.
Mm-hmm.
And they get a funny email that's just like a note and a couple of jokes about what's going on in the Friday Beers universe, and highlighting hilariously in some ways, like, and the quality kegs that have been sold, the cans that have been sold, the places that are throwing great events. And the distributors have this like cool way of seeing what they're selling out in the world. And that's a communication that we have every single Friday going out to this team that's like built on that good sense of community that we want to keep building. And we're like, this is a brand that cares about having fun and loves what you guys are doing for us. And then we also make a video every week that highlights one key account in every market we're in. Buy your beers here if you're in Massachusetts. Buy your beers here if you're in Rhode Island. Buy your beers here if you're in New York. Buy your beers here if you're in Nashville, Tennessee, where we have an affiliate bar called Almost Friday Sporting Club. Like those type of things, I think just create a good sense of we're doing this thing together, and like we want to be in the same unit with our salespeople all the time. And that's
Right.
been a very key cog.
It's a very compelling call to action, geolocated. I mean, it's like you said, it's can have national reach, but really local reach is where you really capture people to get them to the account. And what is the kind of the price point at retail for a 12-pack?
It varies in different markets, but it's basically priced just a bit around, assume it to be around Bud Light and Modelo, with a light lager, where it's not the cheapest beer on the shelf, but it's definitely affordable for volume consumption. We are going to launch, as we said, DTC, which will be, you're going to be able to get 2 12-packs and a hat delivered to your door within 72 hours of pressing the button for $65, which is, actually good value. We're giving you a hat that retails for $35 and 2 12-packs of beer, that retails for $35 to $40, for $65 delivered. We're also going to do 4 12-packs and 2 hats. And then the fun one that we, I guess, could announce here, Harry, exclusively with you and your audience, is going to be called the Frat Pack. So for $2,999, we will deliver a pallet of beers to your frat house. 18-wheeler pulls up, drop down the back, deliver it to the porch, and time to start your Friday.
Wow.
And those beers are priced at $11.99 for a 12, which is a very compelling price to a lot of kids out there.
And I assume you're doing that through accounts in wherever they're located.
We are. So we're partnered with Halftime Beverage, out of New York. So we have a footprint. It's not available in all 50 states because it's quite the tall order to do this compliantly. But we have relationships in each of the states that we're going to deliver to make sure that it's all legal and compliant and correct. But we also think it's going to generate a lot of content and engagement. Just picture that 18-wheeler in front of the frat house. How many posts is that going to generate?
No, it'll definitely get the juice. It'll get the clout.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. Thank you for coming on. I know that I have 3 sons all in their 20s, and they're gonna be so excited that I talked to you guys. And so, I know that I'm excited. I've been a fan since the very beginning. So I wish you guys luck, and here's to selling more beer throughout the rest of the summer and through the spring. And we'll catch up with you again and see how you're doing maybe in the first quarter next year, if that's all right with you.
Thank you so much for the support, Harry. It means a lot. We're going to keep going, and we're really, really excited about what this beer can be. So I appreciate everything.